the attributes of God. He impressed upon me that when we study his personality and his attributes and all that, we get to know him better. And the better we get to know him, the better relationship we have with God. And that's always a good thing. And so it will give us power when the enemy tries to attack us as well. So, and the first one that I did was on love. God is love. And it worked out pretty good. It got recorded anyway. But the second one I did was on truth. God is truth. And something happened, I'm not sure what, but anyway, it didn't get recorded. So I decided I was going to just go on ahead and do a review. So I apologize if you've already heard it, or any of it, and I'm going to try to make it different in some ways so it won't be too bad. But a summary of the attribute of love. God is love, and his love is unconditional. It's not based on anything we do or don't do, whether we do it right or wrong. He loves us no matter what. He won't approve of the wrong that we do, but he loves us in spite of any wrong we do. And that is proven by the fact that he gave his only begotten Son to pay the price of the debt of sin that we could not pay. He loved us so much, he covered that for us and made it possible for us to have a relationship with him. So, you don't have to turn here, but I'm going to summarize, unless you just want to, I'm going to summarize 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 8a. And the summary that I'm using is from the NIV, although I shortened it even a little bit more by interchanging love for a lot of the words that were there. In verse 4, it summarizes love as it is patient, God is kind, God does not boast, God is not proud. Verse 5 tells us that God is not rude, or love is not rude. Love is not self-seeking. God is not self-seeking. Just remember, when I say God, I mean love, and when I say love, I mean God's love. God is not self-seeking. God keeps no record of wrongs. God is forgiving. Verse 6, God does not delight in evil. God rejoices with the truth. Verse 7, God always protects. God always trusts. God always hopes. And God's love always perseveres or is steadfast under trial. And of course, God and his love never gives up. It never fails. That was 1 Corinthians 13. I'm sorry. I should have given you a chance to get there. Well, sometimes I don't enunciate very good. And I get misunderstood, so sorry about that. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, so God is love, and his love is giving unconditionally that love for the highest good. And today we're going to study the second attribute of God, which God is truth. And in that, I mean he is in perfect agreement with himself. His word, put in written form, is the Bible, and he wrote or inspired it to be written, and he is in perfect agreement with himself. So if you find something that seems like it's not agreeing in the scriptures, you need to study and study and study, because more than one scripture sometimes is what it takes to come to the complete knowledge of the truth. But he will not go against himself. And some people call that the ultimate truth. So God is the ultimate truth. Now, that I find that even in scriptures, sometimes God will use things that are opposite to help us better understand what he wants us to understand. And so we are going to look at the opposite of truth first for just a little bit, which is lies. And while I was looking up information on this, there's probably more, but I came across 7 types of lies. One lie is an error. It is a lie by mistake. You thought you were right and later on discovered you were wrong. So you didn't mean to tell a lie, but you did. So it's a mistake. Number 2 was omission. Now, omission is on purpose. It's not a mistake. It's where you leave out something relevant, some kind of information that's relevant to make the point more to your liking, more to your benefit. Sometimes to make it look like you're the innocent party instead of the guilty party. You might leave out an important detail. Another type of lie is restructuring. And it's similar to that omission, except for it's not leaving things out. It's distorting the context. When you tell what event happened or whatever, you reword it a little bit to where it's not exactly how it happened, but it makes it more to your advantage. Number 4 type of lies is denial. And that's when we refuse to take responsibility or ownership or acknowledge the truth. Perhaps we were guilty. You know, you did something wrong, and so rather than admit that you did it wrong, well, I didn't do that. We've had that experience when we have our kids, when they're younger especially, when they think they're going to get in trouble. Who hit Johnny? Well, I didn't hit Johnny. Maybe Ted hit Johnny. You know, and Ted goes, well, I didn't hit Johnny. Well, there's only Johnny, Ted, and this other person, and it's like, okay, then who else could it be? He's not going to hit himself. So somebody's not telling the truth. Somebody has denied the truth. And sometimes when that happens, I don't know about you, but as a parent, I have punished the wrong kid because one kid denied it and the other kid refused, who knew the truth and said, and he denied it as well. He didn't want to be a tattletale, so he did not tell who did it. And because, you know, sometimes evidence points to the wrong person, which it happens to adults as well, thus courtrooms and judges and jury and all that, and hopefully they come to the truth eventually. Anyway, that is one type of lie, when we deny that we were the one that was guilty. Number 5 is minimization. And that is reducing the effects of a mistake, a fault, or a judgment call. This happens a lot in situations where a wife or a husband is abused by somebody. The abuser, well, I didn't hit her hard. I just barely touched her. But the evidence is on the bruise that was left behind, or whatever, the marks around the throat, whatever was the case. But, you know, trying to make it sound like it wasn't that bad, when it really was bad. Number 6 type of lie is exaggeration, which this one I have been probably guilty of more often than any other. And I think storytellers tend to be that way. We want to make it interesting. So we might not state it exactly, even if we're telling a true story about what happened, we might add a little something to it to make it more interesting. Well, in God's eyes, that is one of the types of lies, because it's not stating exactly how it happened. And so it's like, well, man, that makes it bad. It's like these movies that they say are based on a true story, they do that in those movies too. So they don't realize, they just think they're making it more interesting, just like I used to think it was making it more interesting. And I bet you if I were to be reminded of things I've said this last week, I probably did an exaggeration sometime this last week. That's a real hard one to stay away from. And the enemy loves it. He loves it. All right, and then this last one, which there's probably more than 7, but I stopped at 7. Fabrication, which is deliberately inventing a false story. Go tell David. I don't know if he's talking about a squirrel or what. It may be something serious and maybe not, but it had to do with the trash can, and I thought if the trash can's on, he didn't say fire, so I thought, well, I better something, I don't know, but anyway. Oh, bless his heart. He's little. We'll give him grace. Oh, anyway, fabrication is when you deliberately invent a false story. I did that when I was a kid. I remember visiting my grandma. I was grade school age, and she told me I could go get the doll out of her closet that she had in there to play with. And they had one of those lights, you know, that has the string on. You have to pull the string, get the light on, only I wasn't quite tall enough. So I jumped up and I grabbed that string, and when I came down, the whole string came off. Well, I did tell the truth that the string came off, but I didn't tell the truth on how it happened. And so I went to my grandma and I said, Grandma, I went to turn the light off and the string just fell off. Well, that didn't sound very serious, but it was a lie. And my grandma was a good Christian woman. And so she proceeded to give me a sermonette on telling lies and how greatly I displeased God by telling that lie. And needless to say, that taught me a lesson. Never make up a story to Grandma. Now, I don't know as I learned it about everybody else, but I didn't. I always told Grandma the truth from then on because I knew she'd figure it out, and I'd get to listen to the sermonette. I didn't like it because it made me feel bad, made me feel ashamed of myself. So, but that is fabrication, where we deliberately invent a false story in order to, It came off, but I helped it. And I left that part out. I just made it sound like it came off before I hardly even grabbed it. You know? It's like, sure, the string came off all by itself, and you didn't pull on it or nothing, right? Because I tried to let her think that it just fell off, that I didn't even pull on it. She said, I know better than that. Anyway, couldn't pull the wool over Grandma's eyes. She may not have had a college education, but she had a lot of God-given common sense, and she knew better. Oh, goodness. Okay, so we know that all those 7 types of lies are the opposite of truth. And God approves of truth. He does not approve of any of those types of lies or any others that I didn't mention. So if we want to please God, we need, and God is truth himself, then we need to line up with him and his truth and do our best and ask him to help us to do the right thing and tell the truth in all situations. And that's not always easy. Okay. I looked up the definition of truth in the dictionary and in online and several places, and came to the conclusion that truth is in accordance with fact or reality. It's what actually happened. It's the body of real things, real events, and real facts. Absolute truth is true at all times and in all places, no matter what the circumstances. A fact that cannot be changed. Let's look at Romans 3. Actually, yeah, let's look at it. Okay. Romans chapter 3, verse 3 and 4. And sometime when you're home, you might read the whole chapter. It has a little bit more meaning to it than what I'm bringing out. But verse 3 of chapter 3 of Romans says, in the Amplified, "What then? If some did not believe or were unfaithful to God, their lack of belief will not nullify and make invalid the faithfulness of God and his word, will it?" Verse 4, "Certainly not. Let God be found true, as he will be, though every person be found a liar, just as it is written in Scripture, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you are judged by sinful men." So, if God says it is true, whether you or I or anybody else believes it, it's true if God said it. And so his word is true. There's people that don't believe that God was behind the writing of his Bible. Okay? Well, he inspired these men of old to write the words that are in this book, and some of them were centuries apart from each other. And he did it. And that's true. It doesn't matter how many people on this planet of Earth believe it or don't believe it. It's true. It's a fact. All right, let's go to John chapter 14. John chapter 14 verse 6 says, Jesus said to him, "I am the only way to God and the real truth and the real life. No one comes to the Father but through me." Then let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. And I'm going to start in verse 10 and go down to 17, but I'll end back up at the end in verse 14. Ephesians 6:10 says, "In conclusion, be strong in the Lord, draw your strength from him, and be empowered through your union with him, and in the power of his boundless might. Put on the full armor of God, for his precepts are like the splendid armor of heavily armed soldiers, so that you may be able to successfully stand up against all the schemes and the strategies and the deceits of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, contending only with physical opponents, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of his present darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly supernatural places." Verse 13 is where I'm at now. "Therefore, put on the complete armor of God, so that you will be able to successfully resist and stand your ground in the evil day of danger. And having done everything that the crisis demands, to stand firm in your place, fully prepared, immovable, victorious." Verse 14, "So stand firm and hold your ground, having tightened the wide band of truth," which is your personal integrity and moral courage. It takes courage to tell the truth sometimes. "Around your waist, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, an upright heart." Verse 15, "And having strapped on your feet the gospel of peace in preparation to face the enemy with firm-footed stability and the readiness produced by the good news." Verse 16, "Above all, lift up the protective shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one." And verse 17, "Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God." So we are going to go back to 14 because it has to do with truth. But all of these are parts of the armor of God, which that's another study. When you study the armor of God, you will see all the part of God, all the attributes of him that help, if we will allow him to work in our lives, it will help us to win the victories over the battles that come our way, because he is our help. He's our helper. Verse 14, "So stand firm and hold your ground, having tightened the wide band of truth, personal integrity, moral courage around your waist, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness." Josie, do you have yours to where you could read verse 14 in this mic?
"Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness."
So it's a belt of truth, isn't it? It's a belt of truth. He's put that around you, you know. I don't know, it speaks to me of no embarrassment. Because if you tell a lie and it's found out that you told a lie, you're greatly embarrassed over that. And belt speaks of holding your pants up, in my opinion. I mean, that just came to me. It makes me think of holding your pants up. So if you put on the belt of truth, you don't have to worry about being embarrassed over anything that was an untruth, because you will tell the truth the first time. I'm trying to keep this short, and I might have shortened it too much. I don't know, but God's attribute of truth is manifested by his keeping his promises to both nations and individuals. So he has promises all throughout scriptures. Promises that he's made to individuals, promises he's made to countries, to peoples, and he will keep his promise. And because he keeps his promises, that proves that that's an attribute of him, because he manifests it by doing that. Does anybody have a comment on anything that we've discussed? Dave's up there shaking his head. He didn't hear everything anyway, so you'll have to go and listen to the video. Well, and then he may have a comment next time around. Who knows? Or he may call me or text me and give me his comments. But anyway, so there you have it. 2 of the attributes of God. Truth. Love first, which God's love is unconditional. And he loves us whether we're good or bad. He wants us to be good, but he wants us to choose good, to be good, because we love him who first loved us. And then the second attribute that we that we studied was truth. And God is in perfect agreement with himself. He does not say this is the way it is, and then a little later say, oh, I changed my mind, or no, that's not the way it is. He always agrees with himself. He never disagrees with himself, and he speaks the truth right off at the beginning. And he doesn't go and ask for our permission or whether we like it or not. He's going to be truth to the utmost. And that's all I have. So you're getting out about 35 minutes earlier than some of the earlier times.